Welcome back to Good Morning LaLa. If you have got big kid problems, well, we do too. We have the host of the podcast, Big Kid Problems, Sarah Merrill, with us today. Good morning, Sarah.
Good morning.
So tell us a little bit about your journey to starting this conversation, Big Kid Problems.
Yeah, so Big Kid Problems is basically a funny social media channel for anybody who hasn't heard of it. And I started it in college. I was getting ready to graduate, not really wanting to join the adult workforce, not really understanding all of the responsibilities that came with the transition of adulting. So I just started putting funny jokes out there on Twitter, moved it over to Instagram. It started to, kind of take on a life of its own. I did it anonymously for years. I was so scared I was going to get in trouble for the things I was saying. But I just kept doing it. And then eventually it just got so popular that I started to turn it into a little bit of a business. I left my corporate job a couple years ago and have just kind of evolved into more of a platform.
But that's a huge leap of faith, right?
Oh, yeah.
Leave the corporate stability and really come out of the closet as this big kid with problems.
Yes, for sure. It's definitely been a journey, to say the least. I did a lot of things before taking that leap. I tried to be as responsible as I could. I saved up. I made sure that I had a lot of revenue streams in the work, so I didn't just kind of jump off and say, okay, now let me make it work. I did the adult.
But you're highly talented. I mean, your Instagram page is straight up, genius. You're very talented with your branding and the comedy. You've had Sarah Ann Stewart, who's a dear friend of mine, on your show as well. So when they come to your podcast, what's the conversation? What are they going into?
Well, I really, I've wanted to do the podcast for a long time, and that's really taking what Big Kid Problems was and taking it to the next level. Because I've been making jokes about the struggles of adulting, and the podcast was really we're going to joke about this, but we're also going to try and solve these big kid problems. So when Sarah came on to the pod, she was actually an expert that was saying okay, here's the big kid problem that we have. I'm going to help you give tools and actual resources to help solve this. So now it's kind of taken on a whole new life of its own, where we're actually not just laughing about it, we're helping people actually solve some of the issues they're struggling with.
She deals a lot with body image, so you would deal with that's a big kid problem.
Yes.
All of the different things. Okay, got it. So,
What are some examples of these big kid problems that you're dealing with?
So when I think of a big kid problem, I kind of like to stay in a similar lane. So I'll talk about, money struggles, because that's a big thing.
That's adulting.
That is adulting for sure. Relationships, being single, being in a relationship. All the good things that come with that, work stuff. So, maybe you don't know what your dream job is. Maybe you don't like your boss. These are similar themes that I see kind of across the board with people in their 20s, 30s going through that transition of adulting. And then, of course, your typical, stuff of coming into adulthood, making bad decisions, maybe drinking too much, being hungover, all the good things that come with kind of growing into yourself as an adult.
Have you discovered any lessons that repeat themselves over and over again that you have learned and now share with people?
Well,
Yes.
my therapist would tell you yes. We have patterns. But I've seen a lot of, the same things, especially when it comes to relationships. And as my brand has evolved, I was just taking a look at my season 2 of the podcast, and I was looking at the episodes we were doing, and I'm like, wow, we're doing a lot of relationship stuff. Because I feel like a lot of people, no matter how old you are, that is something that is consistent. Even if you're married, even if you're happily married, the relationship stuff always kind of, there's always work to be done there.
What are some of the lessons you've learned?
Some lessons I've learned. With relationships, how much time do you guys have? I really learned to, I'm in a pre-established relationship now, and one of the big things I've learned is to kind of think less about what I want and more about what my partner wants.
Yeah, what a concept.
What a concept. It's taking some time. He's probably watching this going,
That's a doozy.
Serious adulting right there. What do you mean? You have needs too?
Yeah.
No, I have needs.
That is where adulting becomes overrated, usually.
Definitely. But there's been a bunch, all across the board.
So who have been some of your mentors along the way?
So it's been interesting, especially being in a social media space, which as an industry, it's so new. As a personal mentor, Sarah Blakely is my hero. She's my alma mater. She went to the same college I did, and I just love seeing power females who, have started their own businesses, who are just have that entrepreneurial spirit. And then I look at people on social media, and it's so cool, especially on social, because I feel like there's so many women in the space who are really achieving incredible things and who have turned this industry into for themselves. So I'm inspired constantly when I see other people on social, even though they're not in the comedy space. Right. Maybe they're in health, maybe they're in beauty, but they're all doing these incredible things, and they're doing it themselves and paving the way for all of us. So it's been cool.
Like you.
Right?
I guess.
So where do you get your humor from? Come on, because you've got some talent there.
I don't know. To be honest, it's just kind of something that's always been within me. But if you knew, like, if we were going out to drinks or dinner, like I'm not like overly comical, you know? It's more of like an internal thing. Like, I
It's like running commentary that goes on while everybody else is.
Yeah, exactly. Like people, when they meet me, they're like, tell us a joke. I'm like, it doesn't work that way.
Give me a glass of champagne and then I'm really funny.
That's true. That does help, actually. It helps the creative process.
So what's next for you?
So I'm really, really focusing in on my podcast. Like I said, it's kind of, it's made this platform, which used to just be like fun and kind of a little bit lighthearted, and has really given me a lot more deeper meaning and purpose with my brand. So I'm really, really focused in. I'm working on my season 2 for the podcast, and that is taking up all my time right now. But I'm also trying to build the brand in all ways, working on my blog, working on my merchandise. I mean, it kind of goes across the board, and it's a lot of stuff. I'm doing a juggling act, but I just try and keep doing what I'm doing.
We'll
You have
keep
any
it
dream
up.
guests for the podcast? Any dream guests?
Dream
Ideal?
Sarah Blakely, if you're listening.
All right.
Yeah, come on.
All right. I thought there might be more, but it's just that one.
Oh, how much time?
Do you have any secrets to this juggling act, staying balanced?
Yes, actually, with juggling, I try not to be too rigid with myself, because I listen to a lot of things. They're like, you have to be super organized and spend your time doing this, this, and this. And especially being in a creative space, I try and do that. But if I'm feeling really creative, we all know when we have those bursts of energy, like I'll sometimes sit down and I'll have like 20 jokes in me. So even if that time is allotted towards doing something else, I'll give myself space to really kind of hone my craft and do what I want to do in that moment, and try and follow what my energy is telling me to focus on.
Well, it's a great brand.
Thank
Very
you so
impressive.
much.
It's really funny. I like it a lot. So
Tell everyone
Yeah.
where they can find and follow you and listen to your podcast.
Yeah, so you can find me all over social media, Big Kid Problems. People sometimes get confused with that. And I'm also on my personal social media, Sarah A. Merrill _. I have a blog, The Big Kid Problems, now the podcast, The Big Kid Problems Podcast. But if you check me out on Instagram, everything's pretty much linked there.
yeah, nice.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.